Hi, my name is Ko. I am a CUSF Writing Center tutor, and today we're going to be talking about sentence boundaries. In this video, we're going to be discussing what is a sentence, what is a clause, and the different types of sentences you can make. It's a general rule that students are required to write incomplete sentences, but what is a sentence, and what is a complete one at that? We learn these concepts early on and rarely review them the further we get in our academic careers. Issues can arise from this because of how language operates. For one thing, written language differs from spoken. Spoken is done more frequently and casually, which results in it being more lax on grammar. Because of this, some things can be said in a verbal setting and be completely comprehended, but if written out, especially in academia, can be seen as abrupt or incomplete. Another issue is the fact that not all forms of written language are treated the same. Take, for example, texting speech, slang, jargon, or fragments. In their respective settings, these varieties could be viewed as socially acceptable, unlike how they would fare if included in something like a term paper. To use them could affect the professionalism of the student's voice and decrease their ethos. All that being said, I'll be providing a definition for a sentence, which is as follows. A complete sentence is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate while expressing a complete thought. The subject is an individual or thing conducting the action, and the predicate is the verb that's being conducted. Note that there's no specification of the order of the subject and verb. Although in English we typically use a subject-predicate combo, the subject could appear after the predicate. For more on this, definitely look into active and passive voice. Now, as you'll see in later slides, the definition I provided shares many similarities to the independent clause. Sometimes they will even be used interchangeably. While there are correlations between them, not all clauses are the same. Sentences are made up of different combinations of clauses. You're probably already aware of the two types, independent and dependent. As established in the previous slides, independent clauses are often thought of as sentences. While they do share similar qualities, an independent clause does not become a sentence until it is punctuated as one. You can see this in the example, Tony visited Maria. However, a common misconception of independent clauses is the idea that they are the only type of clause that contains a subject and a predicate. Dependent clauses also have a subject and a predicate, but what makes them seem incomplete is the addition of a subordinating conjunction. Looking at the example, before the rumble started, you can identify the subject, the rumble, and the predicate, started. But with the before, it seems as though the sentence is missing something. Because of this, dependent clauses don't express a complete thought, and without being attached to an independent clause, they are considered fragments when punctuated as sentences. We have a video going over fragments if you were interested in learning more about them. Conjunctions are used as linking words to connect separate sentences. The way that coordinating and subordinating conjunctions differ are the types of sentences they connect. Coordinating conjunctions are used to connect complete ideas and are often referred to as the fanboys, an acronym that stands for the 7 coordinating conjunctions, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. They are most known for linking independent clauses with one another, but can serve other purposes such as indicating causation. An example of this would be the game was canceled for the weather would not allow us to leave the house. Subordinating conjunctions are not discussed as often, but still play an important role in language. They are often associated with dependent clauses and are used as a segue to and from independent clauses. These are much more numerous than the coordinating conjunctions, which only have these 7 options. As we saw on the previous slide, Tony visited Maria before the rumble started was one type of sentence that could exist. With 2 types of clauses, there are 4 variations that can be made: simple, compound, complex, and complex compound. Starting off with simple sentences, it's exactly what its name would suggest. Simple sentences have one independent clause. This can be seen in the example, I like oat milk. I is the subject, like is the predicate, and it expresses a complete thought. This is the most basic type of sentence, and many other sentences will contain a simple sentence. Note that while there is a type of sentence that contains one independent, there is no such type where only a dependent will exist because, of course, dependents cannot stand alone. And if you were to see a sentence that only contains a dependent, just know that it is a fragment. And if you want to learn more about fragments, we do have a video on it on our channel. Next is compound sentences. These types of sentences contain at least two independent clauses. I say at least two because it is possible to have more than two, but for the sake of clarity, I will be focused on only two. I've also included two variations of the same example. The difference between them is more grammatically oriented. This is to give you a visual of the different ways compounds can be presented. So right off the bat, it is easy to identify where the sentences separate. The second example fully divides them, but the first one includes what is known as a subordinating conjunction. These are the devices that connect sentences. If clauses are the building blocks, conjunctions are the glue. The most commonly used are the fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Compound sentences exist to increase pacing by linking similar ideas, but remember, when making compounds, be alert as to how you're connecting these independents because improper combinations can lead to comma splices or run-ons, and we also have a video on those if you'd like to check those out. On to our next type, complex sentences. Despite its name, its concept is rather simple, possessing only one independent and one dependent clause. Below you'll see an example of it in their respective boxes. Note that complex and complex compound are the only two types of sentences that contain a dependent clause, so once you've identified that dependent, you've narrowed it down to one of the two. They're usually there to support their independent counterparts and can be distinguished by commas or conjunctions. One way to check for these dependents is to read each part on its own. Remember, dependents mean exactly what their name suggests. They depend on independents because without them they would be considered fragments. Lastly, we have complex compound sentences. This is a hybrid between complex sentences and compound sentences, as its name would suggest. They have at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. Again, it is possible to have more than two independents and one dependent, but to avoid confusion, my examples will stick to the minimum. These can be harder to distinguish, especially because they're so long, but remember these sentences are usually divided by punctuation and or conjunction. In the end, it's about separating these sentences and seeing which ones make sense on their own and which ones require more substance. Now that we've reached the end of the presentation, I have taken the examples from the previous slides and have put them side by side so that you can get a visual on the composition of each sentence type compared to one another. As you can see, I have underlined the independent clauses, bolded the dependent clauses, and italicized the conjunctions. All these examples use punctuation, such as a comma or a semicolon, to divide each different type of clause. But remember that this may not always be the case, such as Tony visited Maria before the rumble. But remember, when you're in doubt, to read each individual part and check to see if it fits the criteria of an independent or a dependent. Also, make sure to remember that certain sentences will only have a certain type of clause, such as complex and complex compound only having dependent clauses. With that in mind, thank you for listening and good luck on your writing.